Welcome to The Good Guy Show. I'm David Nesmith, and I'm talking to leaders in the business of doing good about their passions and approaches to helping people grow and prosper. I really love doing this show because it gives me an opportunity to talk to people with a wide range of unique skills and philosophies when it comes to changing lives. And today's guest is no different. Meet Maurielle Laurenne, an executive life coach who has been helping business leaders and other people improve their lives and realize their potential for the last 15 years. In her career, Maurielle has guided more than 1,000 clients, from movie stars and Olympians to C-level executives at Fortune 500 companies and people like, well, me. On top of that, Maurielle is also a spokesmodel, a guidance columnist, a licensed minister, and has won many awards for her work. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
David, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation, and I can't wait to dive deeply into the topics of recovery, healing, and finding our purpose with you.
Me neither. Um, so I'll just dive right in. On the show, we focus a lot on folks who help attain freedom from addiction and alcoholism. I know that you have a unique point of view about addictions. Can you tell me more about that?
Hmm. Well, David, I think as humans, we're all looking for love. We're all here to give and receive love. That's our purpose as humanity. So everything you're doing in life is an attempt to either give love or receive love. But oftentimes, our ultimate quest for love frequently has detours.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the flow of love feels stuck, it hurts.
Yeah.
And so we tend to seek alternative sources to try to find it.
Mm-hmm.
We go pain shopping, as I like to say.
Right.
And when we go pain shopping, we can find ourselves hooked into something that kind of feels like it's giving you love, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
We call that sometimes addiction. And it's because the flow of love is stuck and you're trying to find something, anything to get the flow going. And the truth is, we're all addicted to something
Mm-hmm.
on our quest for love. So the question becomes, how do you self medicate, right? What's your hospital? And then what's the blockage to the flow of love that's underneath that? Because a lot of times when love is feeling stuck and we find ourselves in a habit, a hook, or an
Mm-hmm.
addiction, it's because we're protecting, punishing, proving, or pleasing, right? In that hook, in that addiction, in that behavior, in that detour for love, who or what are you protecting? Who or what are you punishing? Who or what are you trying to prove yourself to? Who or what are you pleasing? Right?
I love that. I love alliteration, and that's a really easy way to remember that. I'm going to make sure that we put that in the notes for this podcast. I want to back up a little bit with you. There was a term you used that was really sort of interesting, compelling, and I was hoping maybe you could sort of elaborate and let us know what you mean by pain shopping.
Well, we want the love with a
Mhm.
capital L because that's what feels good. That's the high vibrational frequency that humans are built for and meant for, and what the universe is all about. But the pain shopping is sometimes when we can't get the flow of love to find us, we take these detours that are the anti love, right? The things that sometimes can be hurtful.
So, for example,
So, for example, when we want to feel, say, the love of a parent, but we, for some reason, don't find that in our household, we might grow up to think that we work really hard all the time and make lots of money and become quote unquote successful in our career, then we will receive some kind of love that perhaps our mother or father would have approved of, right?
So the addiction in that case is, work.
Yeah, the
Okay.
overworking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that could include um shopping
It could
addictions.
be, right? Literal shopping.
Yeah.
But sometimes too, we will look for things that simultaneously feel good but also hurt us. And that's the funny thing about pain shopping, whether it's through alcohol or drugs or sex or work or anything really that we use in excess or in extreme could be considered an addiction, right?
Mhm.
Um, is in some ways it feels good, and in other ways it hurts us.
Yeah.
And yet, in the end, it never really seems to bring us the love that we were searching for
Hmm.
deeply.
You're right. I know
Mm-hmm.
that's true in my case. I can relate to everything you're saying. In my case, and you're right. It starts, I mean, what's so insidious about addictions, I think, is that it starts off as, as something that feels good. You're right, and doesn't seem wrong. And a lot of the things we're talking about are things that you have to do to exist. You can't go through life without shopping. You can't
Mm-hmm.
go through life without eating
Mm-hmm.
or sex.
Yeah.
Those are all just natural functions and also, life functions. But when you start overusing them,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a way to punish yourself or a way to sort of hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's so fascinating. All right.
But
Um,
you make a great point, David, that most of the things we are addicted to um, are in their balanced essence really essential parts of a healthy life.
mhm,
And so addiction is not per se always about not having the thing that we've been using,
mhm.
but it's recognizing that an addiction to anything is when something is used or depended upon in extreme and in excess. And when it's in excess or extreme, it's often because it's compensating or covering up something else underneath, right? And the truth is, most of the stuff that we are commonly addicted to or using in extreme is actually not a bad or
Right.
evil thing in its essence. And when it's used in balance and in harmony, is probably quite common or essential part of a healthy, happy human life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they don't start off, there are a few things, and even actually, I would say drugs and alcohol don't start off as punishment. Um, they start off as, those are the kind of things in gambling that I feel like start off as just kind of making you feel better.
Yeah.
And then the food, overeating, and the shopping don't even start that way. They start as an essential thing to do. But you're
Mhm.
right. When they start becoming, do you think it's self-punishing? When people take it to the extreme, is it or subconscious punishing when they do
I
that?
actually think when we begin to use something in excess, in extreme, like you said, number one, it often doesn't start that way. It often starts innocently,
Mhm.
right? As either something that's
Yeah.
essential to our life, like you said, like food or sex, or something that's, commonly used or enjoyed, whether that's, a little bit of alcohol or things
Mhm.
like that. But then it moves into that place of excess when we find that it's allowing us to cover up or compensate for some painful feeling underneath
Yeah.
that's blocking the flow of love. And I find oftentimes, um, whatever the experience of pain is underneath and the masking behavior of the extreme, excessive, or addictive compensatory use of something is we are protecting, punishing, proving, or pleasing, meaning to look at why we're really doing the thing and going, in my emotions or in my memories or in the feeling that underlies this, who or what am I protecting? Right? Um, maybe also who or what am I punishing? Maybe I'm punishing myself, but maybe also too, my memory or my emotion could be associated with somebody else in my life, a parent, a
Yeah.
spouse, right? And even though I am perhaps punishing myself directly as the user of this
Yeah.
thing, my my hope or my association or my reason for doing it is that I'm thinking about an experience that I received or had with someone else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with proving, when we're addicted to
Definitely.
status symbols, we're addicted to shopping, we're addicted to keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like what are we trying to prove with our excessive pursuit of those kinds of things, right? And same thing with pleasing. Um, Sometimes too, our excess or our obsession is because we're hoping to be liked or
Yeah.
approved of by others or the world at large.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir. Keep going.
Well, we've all done it to some
Yeah.
extent at some point, right? So it's interesting when we begin to look at where we're excessively hooked into something in life. We can begin to unpack it by asking the 4 Ps, right? Like, who or what am I protecting, punishing, proving, or pleasing by excessively indulging in this thing? And then we can start to alchemize or transform it by asking ourselves with that behavior, how does it help you? How
Mm-hmm.
does it hurt you? And how can you bring it into harmony? Because the truth is, harmony is healing, and healing is the return to love.
Yeah. It's so funny. I've been using the word harmony lately in to replace balance. I
Mm,
just feel like it's more sort of, it sounds more spherical, and balance feels so kind of two-dimensional.
mm.
I don't know how to explain it, but I just think harmony is different and stronger, and than just having a balanced life. I want a life in harmony. I guess I think what that means to me is being in harmony with the world and with nature and with whereas balance is I'm this amount of time at work, this amount of time at play, having a balance, and I'm doing exercise and working spiritually. But harmony to me means like living with the energy of the
Yeah,
world. Yeah. Sorry, I got off track there for a second. And anyway, I didn't mean to, but I love that you keep saying harmony. And I've been realizing lately that that's sort of what I'm looking for.
I really like your definition of harmony.
Hmm.
It's really vibrant and it's really alive and it's more three-dimensional rather than two-dimensional with
Hmm.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting, you were talking about all the different types of extremes or excesses or addictions. And I think also too, um, we can reposition sometimes the shame or embarrassment or guilt that we feel about our addictions or our obsessive indulgences when we can approach it from the innocence of love. So often when we are confronted with having to face our addiction
Hmm.
because of the perhaps effects it's having in our life or the repercussions, is we sometimes want to avoid even acknowledging the addiction because we feel embarrassed, guilty, or shamed. But I think that when we recognize that underneath it all it's really just a quest for love, which is the most pure and innocent and original human purpose that one can ever imagine, then I think it helps to free us from the negativity associated with admitting and being courageous enough to explore the reason for our addiction and the willingness to change and the possibility for love to triumph in the end.
Yeah, so can you how does that manifest? I mean, how does a person approach the shame and the guilt and all of the bad things they've done? And all of the internal self-esteem issues that they have that they grew up with. How does, that approach you're talking about with it, and I think you said innocent love, or how do you apply that to your, let's just for want for a better word, issues?
Yeah. All addictions are masking behaviors for an unfulfilled love quest.
Yeah.
So when you identify what your addiction is, or your indulgence, your extreme use of something,
Mm-hmm.
is to start to look at what is the source wound, that original blockage to the flow of love,
Right.
because it's the love that you're looking for underneath each of the wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can honor and pursue the quest for the love that's underneath the original source wound, then that often can outweigh the discomfort that may be involved in exploring the wound to get through it to the greater love that you seek. You know, there's a beautiful quote by a really popular Persian poet named Rumi.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have heard it.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he says, the wound is where the light enters,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Um, so going the that approach with love, it feels like to me that that could also play a big part in reckoning with the four P's you talked about. Who are you punishing? Who are you pleasing? Who are you, in a way that can translate into forgiveness, I guess, for the punishing part, going at it through love and compassion.
Yeah.
The person who wronged you, or and of course I feel like forgiveness is really freeing. And another quote that's a little bit overused, I think, is that holding a resentment is like drinking poison and thinking the other person's gonna die.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting about forgiveness because for many people, some truly horrible things have happened to them.
Yeah, trauma.
And at first, hearing that one should consider forgiving their perpetrator or the situation is almost unthinkable.
Yeah.
And in that, though, is the forgiveness is more for you even than for them.
Hmm. Yes, of
And
course.
forgiveness is not approval, and forgiveness is not condoning. But forgiveness, in many ways, is about giving the energy back to the person who brought it to you
And letting go.
and letting go,
Mhm.
so that you don't have to hold on to the weight and the heaviness of the energy that was given to you by that person or that situation, because it never belonged to you in the first place.
I love that. That's great. And that feels sort of very stoicism, uh, which of course, and most of the people who've seen these before know that, that's something I'm really interested in too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, one thing that I also remember, hearing is that and I think it's great to, let me start over. One thing that I also, hear a lot, and that I think it's great to remember and realize, is that the person and the event that you are obsessing over, that person hasn't given it another thought in 20 years. So it's not like they are thinking about it, but you are obsessing over it. So, they probably forgot that happened, or at least they didn't care to begin with, and they don't care anymore. So,
It's, I wonder about aliveness
mhm.
versus deadness, which is when a deeply painful experience has occurred in our life, which then may prompt a lot of other possible painful behaviors as we try to learn to cope and move through healing and rediscover love again,
Mhm.
is what feels alive versus what feels dead. And the question really becomes, whatever addiction or extreme behavior you have taken on because of a painful or traumatic situation, at some point you have to ask yourself, what do I want to give life to? And if I keep replaying this painful experience in my life again and again and again, every time I reach for this excessive compensatory behavior, I am choosing to keep that painful experience alive and everything else in my life deadened because of my overuse of this behavior or thing.
And
And
focus.
at some point, when we choose something else in our life that feels more alive, like moving towards our future,
Yeah.
wanting to have a child, hoping to have a healthy relationship, wanting to get back in shape, starting a business, whatever it is, at some point we have to choose what we want to kill and what we want to let live.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask me what you should place your bets on, kill the pain of the past so you can let the present and the future be alive.
Yeah. Again, here's another analogy, but it's like, which dog do you want to feed? The good dog or the bad dog?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
And in that too, it's important to not sideswipe or ignore or minimize the painful experience of our past that prompted us into the excessive behavior, because we can't skip steps. We can't just say something really terrible happened to me in the past and that's why I act the way that I do now, but I should snap my fingers, put on a happy face,
yeah.
and move towards my future. um, we have to go back to the beginning,
Yeah.
to that situation that caused the pain, and reckon it, honor it, and give it a proper funeral. We don't get to just pretend that it never happened and walk away,
Yeah.
because it will still keep looking for us. But if we give it a proper honored burial, we can meet it and also leave it
Do
and
you
move
think that
forward.
do you think that the burial is it helpful to sort of build a ritual around that, or some kind of event that where you really can physically let go of that,
That
something
may
like that?
help.
Like, some people write it down and put it in a fire or burn it,
Yeah.
or might go out in the at night in the forest and chant, things like that. I think those are helpful.
You make a great point. Ritual can be a very powerful tool for transitions and
Yeah.
transformations. In our cultural history, this is why ritual or ceremony has been used for thousands of years in every culture across the world to mark important events, whether that was holy days,
Yeah.
weddings, births, deaths, so on and so forth. So, in the ceremony of our own life, we can use ritual to demarcate transitions and turning points.
Hmm.
So, if one is interested in doing that, building an experience, a ritual that is full of the symbols of both maybe the past or the pain that you are choosing to honor, respect, acknowledge, witness, and give a proper funeral to, as well as the hope for the future, the anticipation, the possibilities, the openness, the things you are ready to call in and receive, can be, I think, a powerful way to acknowledge and alchemize both the past and the present and the future into a timeline that makes you feel like you are returning to the love from which you were born and made for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in your work with, with your clients, is there do you feel like that there's something or some are people, different people more predisposed to these, addictions and to, whether it's a genetic thing or certain types of trauma and experiences?
That's a great question. How do we know what we might be susceptible
Yeah.
to become addicted to or hooked into or use in excess?
Hmm.
My answer is there's two things. There's universal collective experiences, and then there's also maybe individual predispositions or tendencies. So let me tell you what I see in both arenas. I think as a society, there's 12 major types of addiction I think we're dealing with in the present time. I think as a society, we're addicted to ourselves,
Hmm.
we're addicted to stuff,
Yeah.
addicted to distraction and overstimulation. We're addicted
Social
to
media.
we're addicted to drama.
Hmm.
We're addicted to attention and validation. We're addicted to productivity. We're addicted to each other and relationships.
Yeah.
We're addicted to power and control. We're addicted to highs. We're addicted to achievement. We're addicted to technology.
Yeah.
And we're addicted to escapism.
I thought of escapism while you were talking. I was going to ask you, but you said it. So, and I
I
feel
think
like,
escapism might be the crown jewel of all of our addictions.
well, I was about to say that felt like most of the things you mentioned were forms of escapism,
Yes,
you know,
they are.
or can be if overused.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, well, we'll need to make sure I will never remember that list. So I'm going to need to get it from you and also put that in the notes.
Well, we'll drop the social addiction list into the notes of the podcast here, but
Yeah.
I have a little bit more to say on that to give some examples.
Yeah. Please.
So in the modern day, one of the biggest addictions society has is to itself, right? And this can come in the form of noticing when we're in excessive use, particularly of things like appearance altering procedures,
Yeah.
right? Extreme exercise, this obsession all the time with the way we look. There's also, I think, a lot of times too, an obsession with like needing to be seen or being the center of attention, right?
Yeah.
In the category of addiction to stuff, it can show up as an obsession with making money or an obsession with spending money,
Yeah.
like hoarding and shopping
Hmm.
in extreme amounts, right? Um, Interestingly, even with our resources of stuff, things like overeating and over drinking and gluttony in general is a big thing in our modern society too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I have to admit that I do live in Houston, and at one point in history, Houston was reputed as the fattest city in America because, of
I
course, we do have
remember.
many fantastic restaurants, which is a
Yeah.
wonderful attribute of living in Houston. But you talk about feeding our addiction.
Yeah.
So the overeating, the over drinking, the gluttony, right? It was very easily accessible in a
Yeah.
place like this. Um,
And it's not, it is not, Houston is not friendly for walking.
mhm.
It's we are in our cars or
We
in
have to
air
drive
conditioning,
because it's so big. It's such a big
yeah.
city.
Yeah.
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 In the category of distraction and overstimulation, what I see is addictions to entertainment,
Mhm.
like social media, doom scrolling, information overload, always having the ear pods in, always something is going on, constantly checking our phones, right? So there is definitely an entertainment, hyperstimulation, distraction quality to where we get sucked into right now.
Yeah.
Now, in the arena of drama, um, we can get addicted to extreme emotions,
Mhm.
right? So actually, anytime we experience really extreme emotions, it flushes our body with hormones and chemicals.
Even if it's rage.
Even if it's rage,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's stress, our
Yeah.
body actually gets addicted to those high cortisol levels.
Anxiety, all that.
Anxiety, stress, rage
Yeah.
produces all of that. So the addiction to drama becomes very biological and physiological, because even though it's not good for us,
Mhm.
it's it's addictive in the body,
Yeah.
right? So we get addicted to emotional drama. Another thing that I see in the category of emotional drama is people dwelling on the past. They just cannot let something go,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So they get stuck in this loop of constantly revisiting how their spouse has failed them or how their parents were a disappointment. And it goes on and on and on and on, but never seems to have any progress or resolution. It's just always on repeat,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it keeps them from moving forward into the future.
Yeah.
So, another addiction is attention and validation.
Yeah.
We live in a society that lives for the likes.
We're thirsty.
We're so thirsty. And it's like 24 hours a day, 365. We need
Mhm.
someone, something, some app, something to tell us we're special
Yeah.
and that we're
Yeah.
important,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, being the center of attention has become a real addiction
Yeah.
for a lot of people in
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
The other big addiction I see is productivity. It
Mhm.
comes in the form of like workaholism,
Yeah.
and also constantly thinking that something needs to be fixed. You
Mhm.
know, I see this all the time, even when people aren't obsessively working at work, then they come home and they can't stop. They have to fix something in the house. They have to still check the emails. They still
Yeah.
have to, fix the bathroom sink,
Mhm.
right? They can't just be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're always looking for something that's broken or to do
Yeah.
so that there can be activity.
Yeah. Well, we've talked quite a bit about the problem and a little bit about the solution, but I was wondering if you could sort of walk us through how you work with people to overcome, these issues.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have more to say on the other 6 addictions. So let's come back to that
Okay.
here in a second. But, my experience is I'm in the business of helping people make better decisions,
Mhm.
right? And so in that, um, I try to focus a lot on helping people become more conscious. And what I mean by conscious is aware of the things that are influencing their experience and how they decide.
Mm.
Because the truth is that life is all about choices and decisions, right? 50% of our life is what we've been gifted, right? Meaning what we've received or what's happened to us. And then the other 50% of our life is what we choose to do with what we've been gifted,
Yeah.
meaning what's happened to us or what we've received, right? So most of our life is, what choices do I need to make? What do I need to do with the experiences that I've been gifted? So empowered choice making is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And in order to make more powerful choices, we have to become aware of all the things that could possibly be influencing how we decide, right?
Yeah.
Because our options are expanded by what we know and limited by what we don't. So it's our awareness or our lack of awareness that shapes what we think is possible. And so total awareness of a situation requires us to go beyond the obvious or what we can already see and know and into the realms of more of the unseen or the invisible, right? And so I've spent my career studying these invisible influences that shape our consciousness and therefore affect our possibilities. Now, I use a unique and somewhat unusual approach that's based on the mathematics of people's birthdays. And what I have found is, everything in the universe is born in the quantum field,
Yeah.
right? As energy, vibration, frequency, and harmony. This is the mathematics of the universe. And many scientists have said mathematics are poetically the language of God. And
Yeah.
so everything in the universe has some kind of mathematical pattern or code that gives instructions about what it's intended to become, right? Just like in our DNA, right? Our
Yeah.
DNA has a mathematical code that says,
Sure.
for example, in my case, I was born to eventually be very tall and have dark hair and dark eyes, right?
Yeah, and for people who can only see from the neck up, I can attest that you are very tall.
I am. That's in my
Yeah.
mathematical code.
Yeah. Everyone, she's right. She is very tall.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so when we can look at the universal mathematics and decode it, it can give us really accurate information about our power and our potential, as well as our blind spots and what we were born to be. And so when I work with people, I ask them for the mathematics of their birthday,
Yeah.
right? Start from the beginning. And then I look into the pattern and the code to see who they are, what they're built for, how do we put them together, and then how do we troubleshoot any of the blind spots.
Right.
And just like everything in nature, we all have nature, an inherent way of being.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at people's mathematical codes, you can often see their possibilities and their pitfalls.
Yeah.
And so, yes, while we do have a relative amount of free will, and that's one of the keys to being human is to being a good decision maker,
Yeah.
is we do have natural tendencies, right?
Yeah.
And so certain people can be inclined towards certain types of addiction, right? It's where they're going to go to self-medicate, to be in their hospital until they can return to the flow of love. But they have free will, they have choice-making
Yeah.
power, which is why even though every single person is born with tendencies, nobody is a prisoner of their pattern.
Yeah.
So we can become aware of the tendencies just as much as we can become aware of the power, the potential, and look at the pitfalls and say, great, now that I know this information from that point of view, I'm not a prisoner of my pattern. I'm just aware of what I might tend to do. And then how can I use my power and my choice making ability to come into my strength, right? And step into my full potential. So, David, I want to go back to
The
the
addiction.
common human addictions
Yeah.
that we might tend to experience. So, another one that I see in our modern society is our addiction to each other, to relationships, and over socializing, right? And so, what this can show up as is an addiction to people pleasing and approval seeking. I also often see people who are stuck in over socializing and constantly dating or always being in a relationship that they just can never walk away from.
Yeah.
Another big addiction of the modern man is power and control, right? The things particularly that we think are going to give us power and control, like money or sex or a fancy title, right? Now, another big addiction of humanity is wanting to get a high, which is risk, actually. Sometimes we can be very addicted to risk and like adrenaline junkies.
That's me.
Is that you?
I
Is that your
love
guilty
risk. I
pleasure?
love putting myself in danger. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to me.
It is, because it gives us a dopamine rush.
Yeah.
So, we have a really strong physiological response to risk,
Hmm.
right?
Love it.
Um, Now, in that too, one of the big addictions, particularly in America, is achievement.
Yeah.
So, part of what is sold to us as the American dream is the addiction of achievement and the illusion that a hyper focus on status symbols, career, and money is going to find love for us,
Yeah.
right? But we can see when we look at the corporate world, how sickening when in an extreme, those things can actually make us,
Yeah.
right? Now, another
Or
big addiction,
absolute power corrupts absolutely.
yes, very well said. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, another big addiction of contemporary society is technology,
Yeah.
right? We are constantly hooked into screens and devices. And everything in our life now depends on what's in the palm of our hands. Everything
Mhm.
from our bank accounts to our relationships to our health records to our ability to connect with loved ones to ordering our groceries,
Yeah. All of our
right?
communications.
Everything is in this virtual world. And
Yeah.
it's not that technology is wrong or evil, because it's also helped to advance society in many ways.
Sure.
But we are the ones who need to decide on the appropriate proportion of our relationship to the technology to make sure that technology serves us, not we are serving technology. Another big
Well,
addiction
yeah.
is I see
Oh,
people constantly like worrying about the future, right? You've got some people who love to be stuck in the past, and then you've got others who constantly love to hang anxiety and worry about the future, right?
yeah. I've I, I and I like to say that, you know, resentment is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future, and gratitude is living in the present.
That is so good.
Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful truth right there.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
No.
And
Um,
the big addiction that is the crown jewel of them all, because it encompasses all of them, is escapism,
yeah.
right? In all extreme behaviors, we are running away from something and hiding from ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And whether that's through drugs, alcohol, um, shopping, all of the things that it could be, it is a form of escapism. Anything used in excess and extreme is a way to run away from something and hide from ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. Well, is there anything that you want to add, that you want to make sure that the listeners or the viewers uh, know?
Yeah. Um, it's interesting when we're an addiction is often always associated with some painful experience in
Yeah.
our life.
Hmm.
And so when we're either going through the painful experience or when we're going through the pain of the addiction, we might be wondering, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And will I ever feel happy again?
Yeah.
Will I ever feel normal again? And I've learned a couple of things. I've learned that when we are in the grips of suffering, that actually there's really only two ways to open a heart to love, right? It's love and loss.
Hmm.
So either way, life will break you open.
Yeah.
And that crisis can be either an implosion or an evolution, depending on